Welcome back. You're still tuned in to News and Views with myself, Salalo Makwidiri. The time is 2 minutes past 9, and this hour of News and Views is proudly sponsored by Africa Muslims Agency. Africa Muslims Agency, a beacon of hope to communities for over 35 years in Africa and beyond. And with that being said, social media has transformed activism, and nowhere is this more evident than in the global movement for Palestinian solidarity. While traditional activism relies on protests, petitions, and policy changes. Platforms like TikTok have given particularly young people a new and powerful way to engage with global issues. The viral nature of social media allows stories, sound bites, and messages to spread a bit rapidly than they naturally would, and reaching audience that mainstream media often neglects. And one of the most striking examples of that is the impact of Egyptian comedian and satirist Basim Yusuf's viral interview with Piers Morgan. I think we can all remember it, where his sharp wit and powerful comparisons helped shift narratives around the Israeli occupation of Palestine. And his words resonated deeply with young people, particularly on TikTok, inspiring conversations and real life activism. And joining us today to dissect and discuss the role of TikTok in Palestinian activism and social media as a whole is Khadija Dadu, a first or third year, yeah, a third year psychology student at UNISA, and she'll be joining us today via our virtual platform. And she recently wrote, I think, an insightful opinion piece on this very topic. Khadija, assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the show. Really appreciate you joining us this morning.
Walaikum salam, Jazakallah for having me.
Mm. I think we've always known that social media has become, I think, very powerful platform for activism, particularly for Palestinian solidarity. But you focus mainly on TikTok, and you have argued that it has reshaped activism. What makes TikTok particularly different from other platforms when it comes to mobilizing support and conscientizing young people, into solidarity fronts, particularly Palestinian solidarity?
I think the thing with TikTok is that it's just a very global platform. So you post a video in South Africa and yet it will go viral in America or in South America. So it's just giving your voice that would have particularly only been heard in South Africa amplified to millions of people who would have never heard it before. And it allows you to show different opinions and different views on things that most people aren't really educated on, which I think for Palestine is the case. Because Palestine is often seen as something that's too complicated, or it's not something that you can get into. You don't understand what it means. But now, when it's everyday people who are explaining it to you in everyday terms, I think that's what makes TikTok so important. It's just normal people talking to each other.
And I think that's what makes it a bit different. There has been, widespread accusations that platforms like Instagram and Facebook almost suppress pro-Palestinian content, and I can tell you for free that this is something right here on Salam Media we have been victims of, the shadow bannings. Is TikTok a bit more open to these kinds of discussions and free speech? Are activists allowed to align themselves with whatever movement that they want to align themselves with, or are they facing similar challenges like they are on the other social media platforms?
I think at the time of October 7th, TikTok it didn't have such a suppression on Palestinian content. And that's why interviews like Bassem Youssef's went so big and so viral. But I think as the time has gone past and TikTok has been such a big impact on Palestine, they have started suppressing creators, which I think is really sad. People have to watch the language they use, the words they use, so that their videos don't get shadow banned and taken off the platform. So I think it started off really well, but it's going down the same route as other social media platforms like Instagram and Facebook. And that way, you really have to watch what you have to say if you want your message to come across.
Mm, mm, mm. Um, how have you analyzed the rise of social media activism through the years? Because I think a few years ago, it was something that was almost shunned upon. Social media activists were not necessarily taken that serious. They were known as keyboard warriors, and you guys are not coming out to the streets and be chased around by police and be active and show your solidarity in a literal sense. Have we seen it almost morph and change into a respected form of activism that can also enforce change, like going out to the streets and protesting? And what do you think inspired that? Are there particular moments that you can look into and say, hey, maybe that's one of the moments that sparked this change into making sure that social media activism is taken seriously? I think for me, one moment that I can say could have sparked that is the hashtag Black Lives Matter movement. It started online, it was really big, but then it also went out to the grounds. It resulted into a big movement that also was felt quite literally by the people on the ground.
I think the Black Lives Matter movement was a really important matter and what in changing social media activism. I think because it happened during COVID and we weren't allowed to come out of our houses and protest and show our solidarity. So we had to find another way. And that's how the social media activism became so important and it started being taken seriously. I think they led the way with that. And now that we can do protests, now that we can come out in solidarity, social media activism has just been able to amplify all the protests and all the on the ground stuff, while also helping to raise money, because TikTok did do a lot of that, helping to raise money for the people in need. So I definitely think the Black Lives Matter movement just ran the way for that.
Mm, 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 mm. As much as we love social media and we know and understand the role that it plays, particularly in activism fronts, it also has a dark side. One that is filled with a lot of fake news, one that is filled with a lot of cyberbullying and targeting. How can young people counteract that? As much as it's a very, very powerful tool and platform, but as I mentioned, it is a very dark, ugly side that affects young people particularly a lot. What's the counteraction to that? To the fake news, to the cyberbullying and harassment online?
I think one of the things you need to remember with social media is that as much as it feels real on your phone, it is fake. It is the good version of people's life. It is the curated, saturated version of people's lives. So I think that's the main thing to keep in mind when dealing with social media, that at the end of the day, you can put the phone down, you can close the laptop, and you can stop it now. I think in the moment it feels like it's not gonna end, or you can't stop it, or when it comes to cyberbullying, that there's no way to escape it, but you can. And I think another part of that is just connecting with real people. As much as we want to talk to people online, you do become detached and you feel like I'm not speaking to real human beings anymore. And I think that's when cyberbullying and that gets so bad, because leaving a comment in a comment section can seem like it's nothing. Nobody will know your identity. You don't know anybody's identity. But connecting with people in real life, you end up saying less than you would say on social media. I think the anonymity of social media makes people feel powerful. And so when you realize that there's real people behind those keyboards, it becomes a bit less scary, and you find a way to deal with it a bit better. But just sometimes disconnecting from social media is the easiest part. It's not real.
No, definitely. Are we at a point where platforms like TikTok and Instagram, particularly for our generation, has almost become the primary source of news and information? For people, is it at a place where we're no longer talking about, in the next 5 to 10 years, people will be looking into social media for their news? Are we there at this current moment? Is social media an alternative to mainstream media?
I think so. I think in recent years, especially since TikTok had such a boom, it's been used for news. I followed the South African election through TikTok, through content creators who were speaking about it. Uh, you just find so much information about things that you wouldn't really know. I think the thing with TikTok is also it's already curated for you because you have a For You page. TikTok is giving you the information, whatever you do with it you do with it, but you don't have to go out and search for information anymore. You know, you don't have to search on Google what's happening in the world. It's being shown to you already there. And I think that's really important in getting younger people into politics or just keeping them aware of what's happening in the world, especially with things like Palestine and that. It's not something you would see on your mainstream media. So it's people like me, everyday people who have jobs and lives and that, who are still taking the time out of their day to post about it. You feel like you have the duty to watch and to listen and to pay attention to what they're saying. So I think that's why it takes away from the mainstream media, because it's just your everyday people, it's their opinions, and it's just normal.
Mm, mm. And do you feel, it has done a better job in educating young people about current affairs? I mean, I'm just imagining if, we didn't have social media and TikTok, and Instagram, and, the 7th of October happened, and subsequently everything after that, this genocide that was literally live streamed on all of our phones. I'm imagining what kind of world would it be when your primary source of information about the genocide in Palestine was the news, and we know how polarizing it can get. We can know how distorted mainstream media can get. Can we confidently say that social media, TikTok in particular, was one of the main drivers of activism and of knowledge, particularly for young people when it comes to the genocide after the 7th of October, and subsequently everything else that followed through after that?
I think we can. I think, especially seeing the reporters on the ground in Gaza, it solidified what we were seeing in the news as well. So there was no saying that the people aren't starving. There was no saying that there is no genocide, because you're being shown on your phone in your own house that this is what's happening. So there was no denying it from mainstream media or trying to change it. And I think with mainstream media was a lot of the things like you mentioned Piers Morgan earlier, how he said about the beheaded babies. Mainstream media itself proved that it wasn't true, and yet they still publicized it. So I think with social media, you're coming from unbiased opinions in some cases, where you can get your information from sources that don't have that agenda. They really do just want to share what's happening with you. So I think that's where the difference comes in. Is TikTok has that filter.
Mm, mm. And just lastly, before I let you go, Khadija, we're in the new year, 2025. What should young people be looking out for, particularly on social media? When it comes to activism, the discourse on Palestine. There's other things that are happening across the world. You have the DRC happening, you have Sudan happening, and there seems to be a lot of activism and engagements that's going to be needed. How can young people further be involved in global discourse, if I can put it that way?
I think curating your For You page, especially if you're using TikTok as your main form of finding out about the world, I think just following those topics on TikTok, on Instagram, on places like that, and then keeping up with the news, because obviously your only news source can't be TikTok. I think that's a good way to stay in touch and to just keep it in your mind, keep it in the back of your mind that these things are happening. You can keep raising awareness through TikTok, through reposting. You feel like sometimes you're maybe not doing enough by adding it to your story or reposting a video, but you're amplifying the message. And I think that same momentum that we had with Palestine, with Gaza and everything, we can apply that to Sudan, to Congo, to all these places, because they all deserve our recognition. They all deserve our time of day for us to stop and watch the video and understand that this is happening in the world and this is their suffering.
Mm, mm. Mm. And I think we're going to leave on that note, Khadija. Thank you so much for joining us and giving us your time. Really, really appreciate it. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
There's Khadija Dadu. And yeah, I think very, very important. Social media, TikTok, the TikTok revolution. And I think, I'll just reiterate what I mentioned there. Just imagine this, the 7th of October happens. The genocide that subsequently happened also follows. And your primary source of news and information and current affairs was still news channels, mainstream media, television, radio, news channels. Do you think you would have known as much as you know now? Do you think your decisions and what drives your solidarity would have been the same as it is now? You can engage with us on our various social media pages. You can search at Salam Media and you can tell us what you think. You can also send us a WhatsApp on 061 The question is, how much has social media inspired and influenced your look and outlook on the world, particularly looking at the genocide that is unfolded against the people of Palestine? Do you think social media, more than mainstream media, has influenced, your thinking, your decision making, and the way that you perceive, what many people call a conflict in Palestine, but it's a genocide. It's been proved again and again that it's a genocide. Has social media influenced how you react with it, and how you react with people around you, regarding this genocide? And you can engage with us on those fronts. WhatsApp line is 0617660355. You can send us a voice note and we'll play it live on air. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, news and views continues.